If you grew up in the UK in the 1990s or early 2000s, there's a strong chance your first pair of football boots came from JJB Sports. Not online, not next-day delivery, but from a massive, brightly lit store on the high street or retail park, packed with football kits, trainers, gym bags, shin pads, and that unmistakable smell of new plastic and cardboard. JJB wasn't just a shop, it was where school terms began, where Sunday league dreams started, where kids begged their parents for the latest boots before PE. And that's what makes this story unsettling. Because JJB didn't fade away slowly like many old retailers. It didn't quietly shrink into irrelevance. It collapsed, publicly and under a cloud of scandals so serious that by the end, the company felt less like a retailer and more like a crime scene. But to understand how something so familiar fell apart so spectacularly, you have to understand how powerful it once was. The story begins with Dave Whelan. Whelan wasn't a polished corporate executive. He was a former professional footballer who had already made money running supermarkets when in 1971 he bought a single sports shop in Wigan. The shop wasn't even his original idea. It was called JJB, named after its founder, John Jarvis Broughton. Whelan kept the name, and that decision mattered because JJB sounded local, trustworthy, British. It didn't feel corporate, it felt familiar. Through the 1980s and early 1990s, Whelan expanded aggressively, not cautiously, not strategically. By 1994, JJB had grown to over 120 stores and floated on the London Stock Exchange. The money poured in. The expansion accelerated. Then came the move that changed everything. In 1998, JJB bought its biggest domestic rival, Sports Division. Overnight, it became one of the largest sportswear retailers in the country. By 1999, annual sales had surged past £370 million. JJB stores weren't small boutiques either. They were huge. Some had indoor football pitches, gym facilities, even soccer domes. Massive, all-weather sports structures attached to flagship locations. At its peak in the mid-2000s, JJB operated over 430 stores across the UK and Ireland. The company sponsored stadiums. Its founder flew around the country in a helicopter inspecting sites, and for a moment, it looked unstoppable. But here's the detail that matters most. JJB never really decided what it wanted to be. It wasn't cheap enough to dominate on price. It wasn't fashionable enough to dominate in style. It was big, but dangerously undefined. And while JJB was busy expanding its footprint, two rivals were quietly sharpening their knives. One was about to dominate fashion, the other was about to dominate the price. And JJB was standing right in the middle. That's where the trouble truly began. By the early 2000s, JJB Sports looked unbeatable from the outside. Hundreds of stores, national recognition, prime locations on the British high street. But inside the business, a quiet problem was taking root. JJB didn't know what it was anymore. Retail is unforgiving when it comes to identity. You can be premium, you can be cheap, but if you're stuck in the middle, customers don't know why they should choose you. And that was exactly where JJB found itself. On one side was JD Sports. JD wasn't trying to sell football boots to everyone, it was selling culture. Trainers weren't just footwear, they were fashion statements. JD leaned hard into youth identity, exclusivity, and brand heat. Nike, Adidas, Puma, displayed like trophies, limited drops, cool store layouts, a vibe that said this is where style lives. JD didn't need to be the cheapest. It needed to be the place people wanted to be seen. And it was working. On the other side was Sports Direct, run by Mike Ashley. Ashley didn't care about vibes or fashion. He cared about volume. Huge warehouse-style stores, aggressive discounts, endless stock. If you wanted the lowest possible price, Sports Direct was unbeatable. Ashley squeezed suppliers, slashed margins, and trained customers to expect bargains. The experience wasn't pretty, but it was effective. So where did that leave JJB? Too expensive to beat Sports Direct, too bland to beat JD Sports. JJB was neither aspirational nor brutally cheap. It was just there. And in retail, just there is deadly. Then came the moment when trust began to crack. In the mid-2000s, JJB became embroiled in a price-fixing scandal involving football replica kits. Investigators found evidence that several major retailers had coordinated prices, keeping shirt costs artificially high. For customers, it felt like betrayal. JJB wasn't supposed to be the flashy elite shop. It was supposed to be fair, accessible, honest. Now it looked like it was playing the same games as the big corporations it once positioned itself against. The fines and compensation hurt financially, But the reputational damage was worse. Once shoppers start questioning whether a retailer is playing them, loyalty disappears fast. At the same time, the retail world itself was changing. Online shopping was accelerating, rents were rising, high streets were becoming riskier. JJB's giant superstores, once an advantage, were now expensive liabilities. And while JD Sports adapted quickly, refining its image and store footprint, JJB stayed bulky and slow. The company kept expanding locations instead of refining its strategy. More stores, more rent, more overhead, but no clearer identity. Then in June 2007, something telling happened. Dave Whelan, the founder, the driving force, the man who built JJB, sold his remaining stake in the company. He walked away with roughly £190 million. The timing was perfect. Just before the financial crisis, just before the debt spiral, just before the scandals exploded, the man who understood JJB best had exited the stage. And what he left behind was a giant retailer with shrinking relevance, rising costs, and competitors that were no longer playing nice. The cracks were no longer hidden. They were spreading. When Dave Whelan walked away in 2007, he didn't just leave a gap in ownership. He left a leadership vacuum. And into that vacuum stepped Chris Ronnie, a retail executive with experience at Umbro and, ironically, Sports Direct. On paper, he looked qualified. In reality, his tenure would mark the point where JJB lost control of its own story. Ronnie didn't believe JJB's problem was identity. He believed it was image. So instead of fixing the fundamentals, he tried to reinvent the brand overnight. The plan was bold. Move JJB upmarket, compete with JD Sports, become a lifestyle retailer. To do that, Ronnie pushed JJB into a series of acquisitions, shoe brands and fashion-oriented businesses that had little to do with why customers actually came to JJB in the first place. The result was confusion. Longtime shoppers didn't recognize the stores anymore. New customers didn't understand what JJB stood for, and the acquired businesses burned cash at an alarming rate. What should have been a turnaround became a drain. Behind the scenes, things were even worse. Ronnie was backed by Icelandic financial interests, which sounded impressive, until the global financial crisis hit in 2008, and the Icelandic banking system effectively collapsed. Suddenly, JJB's financial backing wasn't just weak, it was toxic. Credit tightened, confidence vanished, and JJB found itself exposed at the worst possible moment. In 2009, Chris Ronnie was fired for gross misconduct. It emerged that his shareholding in JJB had been seized by administrators of a collapsed Icelandic bank, and that he claimed not to know the shares were no longer his. That explanation didn't sit well with the board, or with investors, or with regulators. Shortly after, JJB admitted that former executives were being investigated by Revenue and Customs and the Serious Organized Crime Agency. At this point, the company's problems were no longer just commercial, they were legal. And reputationally, that's catastrophic. Suppliers became nervous, banks pulled back, investors fled. JJB wasn't just losing money, it was losing credibility. The final twist was cruelly symbolic. Mike Ashley's Sports Direct, the very rival that out-executed JJB at every turn, bought the JJB brand name, website, and just 20 stores for around £23 million. JJB didn't disappear. It was stripped for parts. Today, it survives only as a memory. A reminder that on the British High Street, losing your identity is often the first step toward extinction.